I drove across state lines to visit my son, Owen, for the first time in nearly 2 years. The old Chevy creaked and rattled along the long stretch between St. Louis and Kansas City, and by the time I arrived, my back was reminding me just how old a man can get. Owen was waiting for me on the porch of his modest home in Overland Park, a place that always smelled like fresh-cut grass and barbecue. He bounded down the steps with that old, familiar energy of his, only now it seemed forced, almost like he was performing in a play for someone off stage. "Hey, Dad! You made it!" he called, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He tried to take my suitcase, but nearly dropped it on the walkway. "Whoa there," I said, keeping a grip on the handle. "My old bones can still carry a bag, son." "Yeah, right, Dad," Owen mumbled, running a hand through his hair. He seemed nervous, glancing back at the house as if checking to see if someone was watching. "Come on in, Emma's got dinner going." Through the open window I could smell baked chicken and sweet rolls. My daughter-in-law Emma, always gracious, waved as I stepped into their entryway. "Mr. Wilson! You must be starving after that drive." "I'm just happy to be here, Emma," I said, hanging my coat by the door and taking in the warmth of their home. But even as I settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Owen. His hands were trembling, and he avoided my eyes, keeping up a stream of chatter that sounded rehearsed. We sat down to dinner, but the conversation was stiff. Owen pushed food around on his plate, barely eating, while Emma tried to keep things light with stories about her new job at the library and their youngest daughter's adventures in kindergarten. But Owen was somewhere else, his mind spinning, his fingers drumming on the table. Finally, after dessert, Owen cleared his throat. "Dad, can we talk? Just you and me?" Emma looked concerned, but I nodded and followed Owen out to the front porch. The sun was setting over the neat rows of suburban homes, and for a moment it almost felt like old times, just a father and son watching the world wind down. But then Owen turned to me, his face pale. "Dad, I need your help. I really messed up." His words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "I'm in deep trouble. The kind you can't just walk away from." My heart sank. I'd known something was wrong, but I hadn't expected this. "How much trouble, son?" I asked, bracing myself. Owen swallowed hard. "Big trouble, Dad. I owe money to some people, bad people. And they're coming for it soon. I need a lot of cash, fast." I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. "How much is a lot?" Owen hesitated, looking out at the streetlights flickering to life. "Almost $1 million, he said softly. "I know it's insane, but—" Before he could finish, Emma opened the door behind us. "Owen? Is everything all right?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, just talking with Dad." But I could feel the storm gathering. Something about Owen's tone, the way he'd gone pale, told me this wasn't just a case of missed car payments or overdue credit cards. This was something darker, something that could tear a family apart if we weren't careful. And as I sat beside my son, listening to the cicadas start their nightly chorus, I realized that this visit to Kansas City was going to be nothing like I expected. We sat in silence on that porch for a while, the old swing creaking beneath us, the sweet scent of honeysuckle drifting on the breeze. I remembered when Owen was a kid, always restless, always needing to confess something after dark. Now he sat next to me, grown, married, but looking more lost than ever. Finally he spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, these aren't just loan sharks. They're dangerous. I tried to keep up with payments, but the interest—" He shook his head, hands trembling in his lap. "If I don't come up with the money by Friday, I don't know what'll happen. To me, or to Emma and the kids." I felt the old instincts kick in. 40 years working my way up from a busted transmission in a Missouri garage to owning my own chain of shops. I'd learned how to read fear. And my son was terrified. How did it start, son? I asked, as gently as I could. Owen swallowed. Stupid, really. After the pandemic, business dropped off. I thought I could flip a few cars on the side, quick money. Then I got behind. Borrowed from one guy to pay another. It snowballed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad, I'm begging you. You have the business, the house in Branson. Your savings, maybe some retirement. His voice trailed off, full of shame. I closed my eyes, Martha's face flashing before me, her wisdom, her patience, her constant warnings about letting kids rely too much on us. You know I'd give you my last dollar if it would save you, I said quietly. But $1 million, Owen? That's everything I have. That's my whole life. That's your mother's whole life, too. He hunched forward, elbows on his knees. I know. I know how it sounds. But if you don't help me, they'll ruin me, Dad. Maybe worse. Inside, Emma hovered in the kitchen, probably hearing every word through the open window. Her worried glance caught mine as I walked back inside, Owen trailing after me, head bowed. She forced a smile and pressed a mug of coffee into my hands. Mr. Wilson, is there anything I can do? Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. Owen's been a wreck for weeks. I put a hand on her shoulder. Just take care of those girls, Emma. Let me handle the rest. Upstairs, in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, weighing every option. The business, maybe I could sell it, but not overnight. The house paid off, but it would take weeks to close a deal. My savings, my retirement accounts, they weren't enough on their own. No matter how I turned the numbers over, it wasn't enough. Not by Friday. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from my best friend, Harold, back home. How's the big city treating you, old man? I almost laughed. If only he knew. Sleep didn't come easy. I kept replaying my last conversation with Martha, years ago, before the cancer took her. Don't give him everything, Walt, she'd said. Teach him how to fight for himself. But now, looking at my son, I saw a man on the edge. I'd give almost anything to pull him back. In the morning, Owen was already gone. Emma said he'd gone out for a walk, but I knew he was probably meeting with those men again, negotiating, begging, whatever it took. I spent the day trying to keep busy. Fixing a leaky faucet, raking leaves in the backyard, anything to distract myself from the growing sense of dread. After lunch, Emma sat beside me on the back steps, her knees drawn up, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. He's scared, Mr. Wilson. I've never seen him like this. He barely sleeps, he can't eat. He's convinced they'll come after us, too. I nodded, feeling the weight settle on my shoulders. Do you think he's told the truth about how much he owes? She hesitated. I think he's told you most of it. But there's more. The calls come late at night, blocked numbers. Sometimes, men sit out front in dark cars, watching the house. He tried to hide it from me, but I see everything. The girls are scared. I squeezed her hand, trying to offer what little comfort I could. You'll be safe. I promise. That evening, Owen finally returned, eyes hollow, jaw set. He pulled me aside. Dad, can we go out for a beer? Just you and me. Maybe there's a way to work this out. Maybe if I explain everything, you'll see why I need this. I agreed, even though I felt every instinct in my body screaming that something was off. We drove in silence to a little bar at the edge of town, the Red Lantern, a place where old-timers watched football and talked about the weather. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fried onions and spilled beer. Owen ordered 2 drafts, his hands steady for the first time all day. The bartender, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair, set the beers in front of us and offered a quiet nod. We talked about the past for a while, baseball games, fishing trips, memories of Martha. For a moment, it almost felt normal. But Owen kept glancing at the door, checking his phone every few minutes. Finally, he stood up. "Restroom," he muttered, heading for the back of the bar. As soon as he was gone, the bartender sidled over. His voice was low, eyes sharp. "You're Walt, right? Owen's dad?" I nodded, suddenly on guard. The bartender leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "You need to get out of here. Now. Your son's in deep, and there's talk, ugly talk, about what's going down tonight. Guys he's mixed up with? They're already here. They know who you are." My heart hammered in my chest. "What are you saying?" He squeezed my arm, urgent. "Leave by the side door, get in your car, and don't look back. Trust me." Panic flared cold and sharp. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. My own life, maybe even Emma's and the girls', was on the line. And the son I'd raised, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball and ride a bike, might be the one putting me in danger. The old bartender glanced toward the restrooms, his face grim. "Don't trust anyone. Not even your own blood." And as I slipped out the side door into the Kansas dusk, my world shifted forever. The alley behind the Red Lantern was narrow, dim, and slick with last night's rain. I leaned against the cold brick wall for a moment, trying to slow my racing heart. My hands shook, not from age, but from the realization that my own flesh and blood had dragged me into something that felt straight out of a bad crime movie. I could hear faint laughter from inside the bar, the muffled roar of a football game on TV, but all I could think about was the bartender's warning. Don't trust anyone. Not even your own blood. I crept down the alley, careful not to slip. My old Chevy was parked 2 blocks away. I'd insisted on parking far from the entrance so I could stretch my legs. Funny, how the smallest habits could suddenly save your life. I kept my head down, glancing over my shoulder every few steps, feeling as if any moment someone might come barreling out of the shadows behind me. As I rounded the corner, I spotted a black SUV idling at the curb, engine humming. A man in a dark jacket leaned against the hood, talking into his phone in a language I didn't understand. He glanced up, locking eyes with me for a split second before looking away, but it was enough to set my nerves jangling. My car came into view. I slid behind the wheel, hands still shaking, and started the engine as quietly as I could. For a second, I sat there, staring at the steering wheel, the weight of betrayal settling over me. Owen. My only son. My boy. Had it really come to this? Was I running from my own family? I turned on the headlights and eased out onto the street, doing my best to blend in with the slow-moving evening traffic. My mind was running in circles, replaying everything Owen had said, every sign I'd missed over the last year, his nervous calls, the way he'd stopped coming home for holidays, Emma's anxious looks. I drove past Owen's house, then kept going, unwilling to risk leading anyone back there. Instead, I headed for a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where a man could sit in a booth and gather his thoughts without drawing attention. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and fried eggs was oddly comforting. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. I needed a plan. The authorities? What could I tell them? That my son owed money to dangerous men and that now they were coming after me? Even if they believed me, what then? Could they protect Emma and the girls? My thoughts were interrupted by the buzz of my phone. Owen's name lit up the screen. I let it ring, staring at the name until it faded. Moments later, a text arrived. "Dad, where are you? Please pick up. I need to talk. It's urgent." I put the phone face down on the table. My coffee had gone cold, but I sipped it anyway, trying to settle my nerves. The memory of my late wife, Martha, returned to me as clear as day. She'd always had a saying for moments like this: "Don't let love blind you to the truth." Was this what she'd meant? Had I been so eager to help my son that I'd ignored all the warning signs? After an hour, I made up my mind. I needed to see Emma. to warn her, without Owen knowing. I waited until the coast was clear, then paid for my coffee and slipped back out into the rainy night. Back at Owen's neighborhood, I parked on a side street, taking the long way to the house on foot. The lights were still on inside, the glow of the kitchen window spilling onto the wet lawn. I tapped lightly on the back door, and a moment later Emma appeared, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Wilson? Is everything okay?" I shook my head, voice low. "Emma, you need to listen to me. I don't have much time. There's trouble coming, and you and the girls need to be somewhere safe. Tonight." Her hands flew to her mouth. What happened?" I didn't want to give her all the details, not yet. "Just trust me, Emma. Go to your sister's, your mother's, anywhere. Don't tell Owen where you're going. I'll call you when it's safe." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, and began gathering things for the kids. I pressed a small envelope with what cash I had left into her palm. "Just go." As I slipped back into the darkness, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years: determination, even hope. I couldn't save Owen from himself, but I could save his family. Martha would have done the same, I told myself. Protect what matters most, even if it breaks your heart. Just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed again, a new number this time. The message was simple. "You can't run, old man. You're next." A chill raced down my spine, but I didn't flinch. If they wanted a fight, they'd find out this old man wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I drove aimlessly through the empty streets of Kansas City for over an hour, headlights reflecting off puddles and deserted storefronts. My mind was a jumble of regret, worry, and a rising sense of grim resolve. How did we end up here? A father hunted by criminals his son brought into their lives. No parent ever imagines it'll come to that. At a red light, I caught sight of my own reflection in the rearview mirror, a tired old man with more wrinkles than hope, eyes clouded by betrayal. But under the weight of all that pain, something harder was beginning to form. If these men wanted a fight, well, I'd survived harder times before. They had no idea who they were up against. I pulled into an old hardware store lot and parked under a broken security lamp, the kind of place I'd have stopped as a young mechanic just looking for a good deal on wrenches. While rain tapped the roof, I checked my phone. Still more missed calls from Owen, 14 now. One new text from that unknown number. "Clock's ticking, old man. Don't make us come find you." I deleted it. Let them try. From the glove box, I pulled out the small pistol I'd kept there since the 90s, a relic from another life, but oiled, loaded, ready. I checked the magazine and tucked it inside my jacket. I wasn't eager for violence, but I wasn't going down without a fight either. Martha's voice echoed in my mind. "Stay sharp, Walt. Don't let anyone write your ending for you." I drove back toward Owen's neighborhood, careful not to get too close. Every muscle in my body felt taut as piano wire. My goal was simple: make sure Emma and the girls got out, then figure out my next move. I parked on a side street, killed the headlights, and watched from a distance. The house was dark except for the light in the girls' room. I saw Emma ushering them around, hurriedly packing bags. At least she was listening. Good. I was about to start the car when headlights turned onto the street behind me. A black sedan, slow, deliberate. It rolled past Owen's house, stopped, then reversed, parking under the same oak tree I'd parked beneath earlier. The driver stayed inside, but I saw the faint glow of a cigarette. Just waiting. They were watching the house, probably making sure Owen didn't run, or maybe waiting for me. My jaw clenched. If anything happened to Emma or those girls, it would be on my head. The hours crawled by. Around midnight, the sedan finally pulled away, disappearing into the city. Moments later, Emma hustled the girls out to her old Honda, loaded the trunk, and drove off, heading, I hoped, to her sister's across town. Relief eased the knot in my chest. One less thing for these vultures to threaten. I started the engine, heart pounding, and drove away from the house. I needed help. Someone who wasn't tangled up in this mess, who knew how to deal with dangerous men. That left just one option: Harold, my oldest friend. I called him from a gas station payphone, unwilling to risk my cell. "Harold, it's Walt. I'm in trouble. I need you." His voice, groggy but alert, sharpened with each detail I gave him. "Sit tight," he said, "and don't trust anyone. I'll be there by dawn." With nothing to do but wait, I spent the night in the back seat of my Chevy, gun on my lap, every noise outside raising my pulse. My thoughts went in circles. Could I have done more for Owen? Was this the end of our family? What would Martha think of me, running from our own son? At sunrise, Harold's big blue pickup rolled into the lot. He climbed out, gray hair wild, jacket zipped against the chill. "Walt," he said, pulling me into a bear hug, "let's get you someplace safe." We drove out to his farm on the edge of town, a place I'd known since we were teenagers, fixing tractors and dreaming about the future. There, behind locked doors and thick walls, we hatched a plan. First, gather proof of what Owen had done. If these men came for me, I wanted the police to know who sent them. Harold helped me dig up every record I had: texts, emails, even an old voicemail where Owen begged for cash and hinted at serious consequences. We copied it all to a flash drive. Next, warn the authorities. I didn't have much faith in the local cops, but Harold knew a detective from his army days, a guy who owed him a favor. We arranged a meeting for that afternoon. As we waited, I watched the sunrise paint the fields gold, feeling the old stubborn hope return. I might have lost my son, but I wasn't going to lose myself. Not now. By the time the detective arrived, coffee in hand, I'd made my decision. If Owen was beyond saving, so be it. But his family, and mine, still deserved protection. I handed over the flash drive, my statement ready. "Whatever happens, I want them to know the truth. My son's in over his head, but I'm not just some helpless old man. I'm not done yet." The detective nodded, a look of real respect in his eyes. "We'll keep an eye out. Stay alert. And if anything feels wrong, call me direct. No matter what time." As Harold drove me back into town that afternoon, I stared at the endless sky, steeling myself for whatever came next. There would be no more running. The fight wasn't over. Not as long as I still drew breath. The days blurred into one another after that. I spent most of my time holed up in Harold's spare room, every shadow outside the window making my heart skip. He brought me coffee and updates, and we worked in silence, two old men fighting a war we never wanted. It felt like I hadn't slept in years. The detective, Sergeant Paul Dawson, checked in twice a day. He confirmed what we feared: the men after Owen weren't small time. They'd run jobs from St. Louis to Chicago, leaving broken families and empty bank accounts in their wake. But for now, at least, they seemed to have gone quiet, regrouping after Emma and the girls disappeared. Owen, on the other hand, was falling apart. He called me night and day, begging, threatening, sometimes crying. He left voicemails promising he'd fix this if I just came back and handed over the money. Sometimes he'd sound like a lost little boy, sometimes like a stranger. I listened to each one, but never called back. My only contact was through Harold, and only if we knew it was safe. I hated myself for it, but I hated the thought of those men hurting Emma and the kids even more. One morning, as sunlight streamed through Harold's kitchen window, a thought occurred to me, a detail I'd almost forgotten. "Harold," I said, "what if Owen still has a copy of my will?" He raised an eyebrow. "You ever updated after Martha died?" I nodded. "Left everything to Owen, then Emma if anything happened to him." My stomach turned. "He knows all the details. Those men, if they can't get the cash, maybe they're after the inheritance." Harold's face darkened. You think Owen would? I hesitated, shame burning in my chest. I don't know, old friend. But I saw the way he looked at me that night. Desperate men do desperate things. He poured us both another cup of coffee, hands steady. We need to cover every angle, Walt. Get that will changed fast. Put it in a trust for the grandkids, or better yet, give it to charity until this blows over. Already on it, I said. I'd called the family lawyer that morning, explained just enough to make him move fast. By afternoon, I was signing new papers at a notary's office, Harold keeping watch by the door. My estate was locked up tight now. If anything happened to me, Owen wouldn't see a dime. That night I tried to sleep. The nightmares came anyway. I kept seeing Martha's face, worried and sad, asking me if I'd done enough. If I could have saved our boy from himself. I woke before dawn, sweat-drenched, heart pounding. Harold found me on the porch, staring into the sunrise. Bad night? I nodded. You ever wonder, Harold, when it all went wrong? I thought I raised him right. Gave him every chance. But I never thought he'd. My voice broke. Harold put a hand on my shoulder. You did everything you could. The rest is on him now. Later that day, Sergeant Dawson called with news. One of my guys picked up chatter on the street. Those men, Jake, Rico, and Tony, are still in town. They're watching the banks, your old shop, and Emma's sister's place. They haven't found Emma yet, but they're getting desperate. They know you've moved the money, changed the will. He paused, his voice grim. Walt, I don't think they'll just give up. I hung up, mind worrying. If they were desperate, they'd get sloppy. And if they were sloppy, that gave us an advantage. Harold was already thinking ahead. You ever think of setting a trap, Walt? Draw them out, let the cops handle the rest? I hesitated, the thought of using myself as bait making my skin crawl. But what choice did I have? These men wouldn't stop, not while they thought there was a payday waiting. By evening, the plan was set. Sergeant Dawson would have plainclothes officers waiting near the old auto shop, my original business back in Kansas City. I'd show up in the morning, business as usual, and see if I could flush them out. That night, as I lay awake in Harold's guest room, I ran through the plan again and again. Every risk, every unknown, every possible way it could go wrong. I wasn't a young man anymore, but I still knew how to stand my ground. I thought of Emma and the girls, safe for now. I thought of Owen, lost to his own mistakes. I thought of Martha, whose quiet strength had kept our family together for decades. Tomorrow, I promised her memory. I end this. One way or another. I drifted off at last, dreams swirling with the faces of everyone I loved, and everyone I'd lost. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, every nerve on edge. Kansas City was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes before a storm. I dressed carefully, pulling on an old flannel shirt and my faded ball cap, trying to look like nothing more than a stubborn retiree heading in to check on the shop. Harold handed me a thermos of coffee and a firm handshake. You sure about this, Walt? Don't worry. It's time to finish it, I said, my voice steady even though my heart hammered in my chest. You stick close to Sergeant Dawson, all right? If anything goes sideways, I want backup right away. Harold nodded. Don't play hero. Just stick to the plan. I slid behind the wheel of my Chevy, pistol tucked safely in the glove box, and drove toward the old shop. It felt strange, rolling down those familiar streets, passing the diner where Martha and I used to get breakfast after church, the playground where I'd taught Owen to ride a bike. The city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling, shop lights flickering on, the air still cool with the last breath of spring. I parked out back, slipped in through the side door, and took a deep breath. The place smelled the same as ever, oil, rubber, the faint sweetness of old coffee grounds. I flicked on the lights, sat behind the counter, and waited. Minutes passed like hours. I could hear my own heartbeat, The ticking of the wall clock, every creak and groan of the old building. I tried not to imagine what would happen if things went wrong, if Owen's men showed up before the police were ready, or if they decided to settle things without witnesses. Just after 9 a.m., I heard the bell over the front door ring. I looked up, every muscle tense. 3 men entered: Jake, tall and cold-eyed; Rico, heavy-set with a thick beard; and Tony, the quiet one with the tattooed knuckles. They looked around the shop, sizing me up like a wolf pack circling an old bull. Jake smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. "Morning, Mr. Wilson. Nice place you've got here. Shame you're thinking about leaving it all behind." I stood, keeping the counter between us. "What do you want?" Rico grinned. "You know what we want. Where's the money?" I shrugged, heart pounding. "There is no money. You chased my family out of their home, put my grandson in hiding. There's nothing left to take." Jake's smile faded. "We're not playing games. Your son told us you'd have the cash today, or there'd be consequences." My hands stayed steady, even as fear clawed at my insides. "You'll get nothing from me. And if you lay a hand on my family, the police will have every piece of evidence they need to bury you." The door creaked open again. I almost sighed with relief as Sergeant Dawson entered, badge out, eyes locked on Jake. "Morning, gentlemen. Problem here?" Tony shifted, hands sliding into his jacket, but Dawson's partner appeared at the back door, gun drawn. "Easy, boys. Let's keep it civilized." Rico cursed under his breath. Jake glared at me. "You think you've won, old man?" I stared him down. "I didn't win anything. I just refused to lose." The officers cuffed all 3 men, reading them their rights. Jake kept his eyes on me, but I saw fear in them now, fear of consequences, of justice finally catching up. When it was over, Dawson clapped me on the shoulder. "You did good, Walt. We'll hold them on enough to keep your family safe. And if your son comes sniffing around again, call me first." I nodded, suddenly feeling every year, every hour of sleepless worry. My hands shook, but not from fear. It was relief, a tidal wave, sudden and overwhelming. As I stepped outside, Harold was waiting, his old truck idling at the curb. "You all right?" I managed a tired smile. "Yeah. For the first time in weeks, I think I am." We drove out of the city, back toward the peace of Harold's farm. I stared out the window, watching the streets of my old life roll past. Everything had changed, but I was still here. Still standing. Back at the farm, I called Emma and the girls, finally able to give them the news they'd been waiting for. Emma cried, her voice shaky but grateful. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for everything. I promised I'd see them soon, that it was safe now." As I hung up, I realized how close I'd come to losing everything: family, peace, even my life. But I hadn't. I'd stood my ground, fought back, and protected the people who mattered most. I spent that night on Harold's porch, watching fireflies blink over the fields, feeling the weight of the past months finally start to lift. The scars of this fight would linger, but I was alive. And as the stars blinked on above the fields, I knew that was enough. Days passed, then a week, and the world felt different, quieter, lighter, though the scars of what happened would never fully fade. I stayed at Harold's farm for a while, helping with chores, letting the country air work its slow medicine. Some nights, I'd sit out on the porch with a mug of coffee, listening to the distant calls of coyotes and thinking about everything I'd lost, and everything I still had. The police kept me updated. Jake, Rico, and Tony were locked up, facing more charges than I could count. Owen, though, my own flesh and blood, was nowhere to be found. Sergeant Dawson told me they'd put out a warrant for questioning, but it seemed my son had disappeared, running from the mess he'd made. Maybe one day he'd call, or write, or just show up on my doorstep. Maybe not. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal. Emma and the girls were safe. They stayed with her sister for a while, then moved into a little apartment near the edge of town. I helped them get settled, fixed a leaky faucet, and read bedtime stories to the grandkids. Emma never said a bad word about Owen in front of the girls, and I respected her for that. She was stronger than I'd ever given her credit for. One evening, as I tucked the youngest in, she looked up at me with big, trusting eyes. "Grandpa, are the bad men gone for good now?" I smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "They're gone, sweetheart. You're safe now. And I'll always be here to look out for you." Afterward, Emma made tea and we sat at her tiny kitchen table, the quiet heavy between us. Finally, she broke the silence. "Thank you for saving us, Mr. Wilson. I know how hard this has been, for all of us." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I wish I could have saved Owen from himself, too. But sometimes, love isn't enough." She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "You did what you had to. That takes real courage." For a while, I wondered if I should go back to Branson, sell the old house, start fresh somewhere new. But every time I thought of leaving Kansas City, of leaving my grandkids, I felt that pull: family, roots, the weight of everything Martha and I had built. Instead, I bought a small house just a few blocks from Emma and the girls. Fixer-upper, sure, but with a good porch and a sturdy roof. Harold helped me move in, grumbling about my pack-rat ways, but smiling the whole time. The days took on a new rhythm, helping with homework, Sunday dinners, teaching the girls how to throw a baseball, and sometimes just sitting in the yard, watching the clouds drift by. Some nights, when the house was quiet and the ache of what happened crept in, I'd take out Martha's old photograph and talk to her like I always had. "We did the best we could," I'd say, hoping she heard me. "We loved him. We never stopped. But he has to find his own way now." One afternoon, a letter arrived, no return address, just my name and the Kansas City postmark. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Owen's handwriting, shaky but familiar. "Dad, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I lost myself along the way. Please take care of Emma and the girls. Maybe someday, if I can put myself back together, I'll come home." I stared at that letter for a long time, tears finally falling, all the grief and relief mixed together. I couldn't change the past, couldn't fix everything that had been broken. But I could forgive. And I could move forward. The seasons shifted. Summer faded to fall, and the air grew crisp. The grandkids started school, Emma found a steady job, and life began to resemble something like normal again. There were still hard days, but there was laughter too, little moments of grace that reminded me why we fight for family, even when it hurts. Looking back, I realized that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about choosing, again and again, to hope, to protect, and to love, no matter what's thrown your way. I wasn't the same man I'd been before all this started, but maybe that was all right. Maybe, in the end, I was stronger. On the porch one evening, with the sun dipping low over the city, I watched the girls chase fireflies in the yard. Emma leaned in the doorway, smiling, and Harold waved as he drove past, horn tooting in the twilight. And for the first time in a long, long while, I let myself believe that everything was going to be okay.